Check out this fella here, Sam Brinton. I have some pretty big news to share with you all today. I've accepted the offer to serve as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Spent Fuel and Waste Disposition in the Office of Nuclear Energy for the Department of Energy. Apparently he's qualified for the job, with a Bachelor of Science in Nuclear Engineering and a Master's of Science in Nuclear Science. He's notable for developing a new type of nuclear fuel reprocessing, whereby nuclear waste that would once be disposed of at a repository could be repurposed and reused, cutting down on waste by 96%. He's also got a music degree, but I don't suppose he's going to be splitting atoms with his singing voice. That's something that I do. However, he's also an LGBTQ activist, advocating against conversion therapy, something that his rural parents put him through. Oh, and he's also apparently gender fluid, which makes him a they, actually. Oops. Don't ban me, Susan, I'm trying to be good, but you know how it is. Not many women have that mustache.
I use they and them as my pronouns, and when someone uses they and them as my pronouns, I feel like that person is listening to me. That person cares about me, and that person wants to have a conversation with me.
Man, I'm never gonna get used to that. Not the they-them thing. I'm actually fine with that. I'm okay with he, she, and they. They're part of the English language already, and not imposed upon the normies like neopronouns, or xenopronouns? Neopronouns are any set of singular third-person pronouns that were directly created or adapted within the language instead of evolving within it, and are frequently not officially recognized in the language they're used in. Yeah, here we go. In English, there are 4 sets of recognized exipronouns. She, her is considered feminine, he, him is considered masculine, and they, them is considered neutral and less controversial than the 4th set, it, its. Okay, so a neopronoun is anything like that z-zer shit. What I wanted to say before jumping down the pronouns wiki rabbit hole is I'm fine with he, she, and they. Not z or anything else, because that's just an imposition on normally evolved language for ideological reasons. But even then, I still can't see myself getting on board with this type of introduction.
So when I introduce myself, I generally say, "Hi, my name's Sam Brinton. I use they and them as my pronouns, and I serve as head of advocacy and government affairs for the Trevor Project."
It's beyond a political imposition on language. It's also just focusing on something unimportant. It would seem to me that a more interesting component of Sam's personality is his work, not his gender identity.
Things that companies and schools can do are, on the first day of classes, and for maybe the first week, having a sticker where you tell people, "Hi, my name is Sam, my pronouns are they and them."
Oh god, I would not be a good student in today's school environment. I already caused my share of trouble back when things were more cavalier. I can't imagine having to wear a Walmart greeter badge while in class.
But if I can have the President of the United States use my gender-neutral pronouns, and I can respectfully use theirs, then I think we're going to be in a world where everyone can be respected and everyone has the responsibility to be respectful.
This is technically true, but the best counter to it is that gender is not only your own self-perception, but how others perceive you. A trans woman I know recently told me that she never told people her pronouns and never tried to enforce anything on others. She simply transitioned and fit in as a woman to the point that now the normies reflexively call her she. And that seems to be how it works for most people. Most people know what to call you by looking at you. And if everyone's calling you something that doesn't align with your own self-perception, maybe the problem isn't actually the rest of the world. In any case, the internet has decided to focus less on Sam's credentials and more on the cross-dressing element. Dude, if you're gonna do a mohawk, that's fine. Just make it a straight mohawk at least. And then all that stuff came out about the puppy play. Dog-pilled again, I can't escape it. Here's an article from 2016. Puppy love, from the pups to their handlers and the bonds they share. An inside look at the increasingly popular leather subset. Oh god. There's a lot of people in this article, but here's Sam's segment. My headspace is equivalent to the mom who sees her kid in danger, or the dad who wants to teach his son how to play football, says Newbie's 27-year-old handler Sam. It's the concept of the teacher and nurturer. My job is to make sure that while he's in headspace, I'm keeping him safe. That tale's a butt plug, isn't it? But here's the bit that I found interesting. One of the hardest things about being a handler is that I've honestly had people ask, wait, you have sex with animals? They believe it's abusive, that it's taking advantage of someone who may not be acting up to a level of human responsibility. The other misperception is that I have some really messed up background. Like, did I have some horrible childhood trauma that made me like to have sex with animals? Sam, isn't it by your own admission that you, in fact, did have horrible childhood trauma? Not related to dogs, but certainly related to conversion therapy.
I have those feelings when I think of Dale, my best friend. My dad just started punching. That was the first day that I was sent to the emergency room because I'd fallen down the stairs. Physical therapy was my hands being tied down and blocks of ice being placed on my hands. Then pictures of men holding hands would be shown to me, so that way I would associate the concept of the pain of ice with a man touching me. It worked really, really, really well. My dad could barely even hug me anymore when I would scream out in pain. Then we went into heat. So coils would be wrapped around my hands and you would be able to turn the heat on or off. So now if we had a picture of a guy and a girl hugging, it was no pain. If there was a picture of a guy and a guy hugging, we had physical pain. We then went into the month of hell. The month of hell consisted of tiny needles being stuck into my fingers, and then pictures of explicit acts between men would be shown and I'd be electrocuted. At this point, I was completely done. God did not want me on this earth anymore. So we lived on a 3-story building. I told my sister goodbye and I walked to the roof. So my mom finds me up on the roof, says, she will love me again if I will just change, because my sister had tattled on me. My mom's up there, she'll love me again if I'll just change, which is not the thing to say to a person standing on the edge of a building. At this point, I'm a logical person again, and it shines through. This is only 3 stories, and if I don't die, this is gonna hurt worse than the others. So I run back into my mom's arms saying, you know what? I'm changed. I came back out to my parents, my mom, and she didn't really know what to say anymore because she thought it had worked. She told me that she would tell my dad because we didn't want the same situation to happen again. I left for the afternoon. I came back and my stuff was on the front door with it locked. I've tried to call them multiple times. My mom has answered the phone once or twice for on her birthday or something, saying, hi. My dad has held a gun up to my head multiple times, but the last time I got on the phone that I tried to keep calling. I want contact, was that he would shoot me if I ever tried to walk in the door again.
This does not sound like you had a happy home life, dude. I don't see how you can square away your legitimate victimhood, and of course your reaping of the associated social credit in your new community, with this idea that you're not traumatized and you're completely normal and nothing's wrong here.
I've been an advocate for ending conversion therapy for a very long time now, and state after state after state after state are signing these laws as late as this week, right? Like, we are truly watching a watershed moment where the power of politics is no longer being used to hurt me, but to help me. I am proud to have just gotten married a few weeks ago. The greatest screw you to conversion therapy known to mankind. I walked down the aisle with a man who loved me as I am and who knew that I come with the scars of conversion therapy, but also with the power and the pride that will no longer happen to another child on my watch.
At the end of the day, I don't actually care about what people do in the privacy of their own bedrooms. There is, of course, the fact that Sam doesn't keep it private. This isn't a bedroom, this isn't a sex club, it's a university lecture hall. The difference between this guy and a Pete Buttigieg type, who has a relatively normal public life with his husband, is night and day as far as I can tell. It's the difference between a normal person who happens to be gay and someone who has no personality other than their sexual preferences, so they center that topic every time they show up. The right-wing side of the internet focused on a few different facets of this story. Some noticed that Sam's being used in Russian news to propagandize their own population about the West's decline. Others pointed out that the rightist cries against cancel culture ring hollow when they want to see Sam lose his job over something like this. And yeah, fair enough, but if rightists stop canceling, it doesn't mean that leftists are going to stop. On some level, this is just the bed you made. Sargon's thesis over on Lotus Eaters revolved around the concept of bio-Leninism. The theory goes like this. When the Leninists were getting together the rank-and-file revolutionaries in Russia, the ones who would actually do the fighting and the looting and the smashing, they gathered up people at the margins of society. The bums, the drunks, the less successful people, the people who were bitter and angry that the next guy over was getting ahead in life while they weren't. And the excuse of workers' revolutionary fervor allowed them to enact the worst, most horrific fantasies upon their neighbors, whom they falsely blamed for everything bad in their lives. The idea of bio-Leninism is that rather than recruiting people from the economic margins of society to attack the center, they would recruit people from the social and biological margins. Unattractive people, dysfunctional people, people with alternate sexualities, people with low status, and this would be their coalition to fight the normies. I think all of these ideas probably have a part in this conversation, but I also think there's a missing component. To be single and looking for a stable, functional relationship right now is pretty hellish, not gonna lie. The internet is full of examples of Tinder profiles where people are openly bragging about their lack of virtue. Twitch thought culture, and more recently OnlyFans culture, has been exploiting the loneliness of their viewers for some time now. And if you're somebody who's looking for a relationship that is more normal, more stable, more exclusive, at least in some places, you're kind of viewed as weird nowadays. A few days ago, an app hit the mainstream called The Right Stuff. It's a conservative-focused dating app, and left-leaning news publications have decided to attack the idea. Peter Thiel to launch conservative dating app because no one wants to date Republicans. And this article hits every single buzzword. Racist, sexist, xenophobic, fascist, incels. Nobody likes you. Nobody wants to date you. You're pathetic if you can't compete on regular apps. You know, before we even get into the validity of this kind of thing, I have a feeling that if a conservative wanted sex from a progressive, it would actually be pretty easy. A philosophy based on sexual promiscuity and openness means all you have to do is keep the MAGA hat off your head for a few hours. The issue is, conservatives don't only want sex, and the reason that progs are framing this conversation entirely around sex is because they don't believe that anything else within the romantic sphere, let alone commitment, can possibly have more value than coming. Honestly, it just feels like the leftoids want the rightoids to disappear entirely. They laugh when rightoids get banned off mainline platforms, but then they screech bloody murder when rightoids go isolationist and try to go off on their own way and build their own stuff. It's kinda like how the MGTOW types get screamed at by feminists for literally disengaging from the dating space. It's not enough for them that you distance yourself. You need to either comply and become absorbed by them, or just disappear. Your existence, even if isolated from them, is an insult in their eyes. This comic here was making the rounds, which made me realize that these two topics, the Biden dogboy and the conservative dating app, are actually part of the same thing. The first panel is an incel angry at the world for his own failings, saying that women owe me sex. The second is an incel, who probably actually isn't an incel, but an average conservative type guy who sees OnlyFans and says women are trash, presumably hyperbolically. Not all women, just the subset who do that sort of thing. And the third panel is very clearly not an incel at all, just a normie who is not into a blue-haired woman fucking a dogboy with a strap on. My position personally is that I don't care what you do sexually. You can be as degenerate as you want. Just keep the not safe for work stuff private. It's probably the case that everyone's got some strangeness to their sexuality, because real sex just isn't like porn. It's kind of goofy, actually. But the point is, there's no reason to publicize it. Pride in your eccentricities isn't necessary. Leather pup play is not an essential part of being gay. Do what you want, assuming everyone involved consents, but understand that the people outside your private life don't consent to see it or know about it, so have some decorum. Your entire life shouldn't revolve around your sexual fetishes. But the push from the left doesn't seem to be about acceptance anymore, though it uses some of the same language that gay activists of 20 years ago used when talking about how they didn't actually want to turn other people gay, they just wanted to live quiet, private lives and not be accosted for it. A completely reasonable demand. Now it's no longer about acceptance, but exclusion. To many trans activists, and to the detriment of normal trans people, not being interested in a trans woman because she has a dick is now transphobia, and any sort of mainstream backlash against that push, like for example the super straight meme, must be considered a hotbed of fascism. A normie who isn't interested in public kink is now a bigot for that preference, and he needs to be slandered with the label of incel because what an incel is no longer just an involuntary celibate person, but rather it's a reactionary movement that seeks to subjugate women and people of color because, well, why not? And those conservatives who decide to disengage from these new sexual values and return to their own romantic social structures are, yes, you've heard it before, incels and bigots and fascists and all the rest of it. It's no longer about combating an intolerant right-leaning society that has no place for leftist sexual morality. We did that. That fight is largely over. It's about making every possible place only a space for that leftist sexual morality, to the exclusion of everything else. Rightist sexual morality can't be allowed to coexist in their own spaces alongside leftist sexual morality. Everything needs to tilt towards them. I have no problem with Sam Brinton doing the professional level job he's qualified to do. I have no problem with his sexuality or gender identity. I have no problem with what kinks he engages in, behind closed doors or within sexual-oriented environments. It's not about him at all. It's about the growing expectation that if you're not at least a little bit like him, you're part of a mechanism that represses people like him. I don't mean specifically. You don't have to have his exact kinks, but there's this growing idea within leftist spaces that if you're not completely open and public about all aspects of your sexuality, you're a sad, repressed, self-flagellating object of pity. I don't buy it. The much more likely result is that regardless of whether or not you have a sexual idiosyncrasy of your own, you've also just got a sense of good taste.